Welcome in, everyone, to They Are Not From Philly podcast. I'm your host, Adam from Wales, and I'm here with my good buddy, my partner in crime, Justin from Tennessee. And as you can see, we've got a couple of guests with us today. Our good buddy, Drew from Westchester, and a long-time friend and Go Birds affiliate, Matt Goram. Matt, welcome to the show. Just welcome, Matt, to They Are Not From Philly.
Hey guys, this is my friend Matt. We got connected through our great friend and Go Birds leader, James Seltzer. Matt is married to a wonderful, beautiful woman from
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
She's the only 10 I see.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful, yes, sir. Wonderful woman, wonderful family. He has graciously accepted me and my son into his family. He brought us up this year for a wonderful, well, it was wonderful in some ways and horrible in others weekend in Philadelphia. But he's a great guy. Been wanting to get him on the show for a while because he has a ton of useless knowledge, like the rest of us in that big bald dome, like me. And great to get him on the show with us finally, guys. Welcome in,
Yeah.
Matt.
Thank you. I feel welcome. I appreciate it. I've been waiting for this invitation since you told me you were going to give it to me. So I've been just jonesing and getting ready to go, man.
No, glad you have you on, Matt. Yeah, so this is our Christmas edition, probably our last show now before until after Christmas. So we're going to try and find some Christmas spirit, even though the Eagles have put a bit of a damper on that the last few weeks. It's been a tough run. Matt, I'll go to you first, and then you, Drew. How are you feeling about the season overall this year? The past 2 weeks, we're coming off a Super Bowl. Beginning of the year, we had a real, good opportunity to go back to back. It's still there, still everything to, in our favor, but it's just been a tough run the last few weeks. So how are you feeling, Matt?
Yeah. When I look at this stuff, I try to think of the big picture. And the big picture is this happened. We won that stinking Super Bowl by a lot. We put a big bullseye on our back. And I like having a bullseye on my back. I would much rather be in the position of being chased than not chased. I am in a position where I look at the record, and I think there's a lot of people that would like our record right now. And I think there's a lot of people that would have
Yeah.
liked to have beaten Kansas City and the Rams and the Bucks. I'm not feeling so bad about it. I think that this is a time for alarm for sure. But I've also seen a couple things in the past few weeks that I started to get a little more optimistic about. I really enjoyed seeing Coop last week against the Chargers resurge because I was a little worried about him getting exposed by the Cowboys. That was something that he was getting rolled on with the Cowboys on the outside. I don't think that he's the guy to be putting outside. We need to keep him in that slot. I think that's really has shown itself to be true. I also didn't realize that Adoree Jackson would be a contributor. I've watched him play for the last few weeks, and he's not the pincushion anymore. I think I really enjoy watching him play. He's playing just good enough to keep us from killing him. And I would say that the play calling last week was more interesting than it has been. Now, that's a low bar because this is a boring offense that is just has a lack of motion, it has a lack of creativity. But last week I did see a little bit of that, and I like that. So I'm thinking back towards the Super Bowl 52, and I remember when we rolled into the playoffs there, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what are we doing here? How are we limped into the playoffs, and then we caught fire, and we learned that if you get the right guy on a heater, everything can happen. Everything can happen for you. So that's how I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like that. I think it's all still there to play for. The play calling was really interesting last week because there was a lot of over the middle stuff that we haven't seen a lot of this year. Jalen was a bit up and down. There was turnovers, but there was catches that AJ Brown should have made at the same time. It was uncharacteristic. The thing with AJ Brown is that you still don't know if he's putting that effort in on certain catches and stuff, and so it's a bit all over the shop. So Drew, how are you feeling after the last few weeks? You were there at the Chicago game as well. That was another tough game. Chargers game was just a comedy of errors last week. So how are you feeling, Drew?
Yeah, no, the Bears game was awful for sure. I think there's just I feel like there's just a bit of like a general malaise around this team right now. Like, maybe it's the byproduct of, it being a night game and it being close to midnight on the, East Coast here. And Adam, I can't even imagine, in like the, mid straight up middle of the night. But I feel like, Jalen,
tough.
threw the interception in overtime. And it was almost like I wasn't even like, obviously I wasn't happy, but it was almost like I wasn't even like, couldn't even muster enough to kind of like get like angry. It was kind of just like, all right, like that was horrible. Let's go to bed kind of thing, which is obviously not, a feeling you would want or expect coming off, trying to go back to back and cement a dynasty. And as Matt said, being the defending, Super Bowl champs and all. I think, I agree with a lot of what Matt said, where I think this isn't, to me, this doesn't feel like 2023, just because the defense, I still believe is very good. And to your point, Adam, I think back in 2023, like, we started getting like really outclassed in games. I think we lost to the Niners. I think it was something like 42-19 down in Dallas. I was there. It was horrible. It was like 33-13. Like they were getting straight blown out. Like you look at these three losses outside of the Bears game where, we kind of knew it was over midway through the fourth quarter. These other two losses have essentially been decided on the final play of the game. And even the Bears game, I still go back to, as bad as we looked, if Jalen doesn't fumble that tush push, we're driving, late in the third quarter, chance to, inexplicably take the lead. So I think for me, the standard, kind of like the standard right now has become like, just can they make us proud for the rest of the year? I go back to, we think back to in 2018 when that season ended in the Superdome. I think there were, ball goes through Alshon's hands and, you squandered a 14-0 lead, but like we pushed the Saints to the brink. And I think we went to bed that night, like proud of like, okay, there were a lot of choppy waters, but like they made a valiant effort in defending the title. And for me, like that's kind of become like the bearer for the rest of the season. Like, can you, you lock down this division, defend the link in your home playoff game, and can you at least, go somewhere in the second round and make us proud? Or maybe the bracket opens and you get, a new you get a second home playoff game somehow where you kind of create your own momentum a little bit. So I'm down, but I don't think it's 2023 by any means, and that's what I need to see the rest of the year.
Yeah, definitely. Just how are you feeling? Because that was a really tough game last week. That was probably the first game I haven't stayed up to watch because like the time usually the time difference, here I'm so far ahead. The Sunday night football games, the Monday night football games don't start till like 1 o'clock in the morning for me. So that game last week finished at 5 a.m. in the UK, and I'm sort of like, I watched it. I got up a little bit early before I started work, and I watched it, and I was like so glad I didn't stay up till 5 a.m. because that would have been a rough way to end the game with no sleep. So just how are you feeling? Because I know you've been down now.
I'm starting to come back a little bit because like you said, man, I was so pissed after that Chargers game, man. We had 5 turnovers and still had a chance to win at the end. And that's what I keep going back to. If you don't turn it up, if you turn it over 2 times, you probably blow that team out. You know what I'm saying? If AJ catches a couple that first ball, if AJ is running flat out, hustling down the field and doesn't give up, he catches that ball. He's there. And we hear about how big and strong AJ's hands were, and it was like when he caught that ball in the end zone and the guy knocked it out, where are those big strong hands there? You're fussing all season long. You're making little, secretive remarks on Instagram and Twitter and stuff like that. But then when the time comes and you have the opportunity to make that stand to say, hey, this is what I'm talking about, you let it slip through your fingers. But Jalen, I was super disappointed in how he played. But like something Matt said to begin, I was super intrigued by some of the wrinkles we saw in the offense. When they were running some 2-back sets with Saquon and Shipley, man, I've been calling for stuff like that. Hank Bigsby is a really good number 2. All these people like, oh, sit Saquon down, stuff like that. Yeah, I agree. You should give, in my opinion, Bigsby 3-4 more carries a game, stuff like that, because he has been a nice spell back. But man, you've got these athletes, use them, be creative. And I'll go back to something Drew's been saying for weeks, man. You can get Frank Reich in there, not be a threat to anyone, just another mind in that building. Say, hey, what about this? What about that? Hey, Kevin, how about calling this play at this moment in time? I've been there. I've done that. I know what I'm doing. I'm not trying to take your job. I'm just trying to help, guys. I want to see you guys succeed. He's their mentor to these guys. So what would it hurt to bring that guy in, like Drew said? But I was very intrigued by some of the wrinkles in the offense. But going back to that Chargers game, man, that defense, I was worried about with Jalen Carter going to be out. Man, they whipped their ass. They beat them from Jordan Davis. I mean, I've been down on Davis for a while now. He showed up. He really showed up that game.
He did.
Byron Young had a pretty good game too, man. So, I mean, in Cooper DeJean, don't take him out of the slot ever again. I see him as a career nickel guy and moving back into the safety later in his career with some of the speed goes. But that guy has like a million IQ when it comes to football field, stuff like that. That guy's phenomenal. But after going back, and I did rewatch it, it was painful. But seeing the wrinkles in the offense and seeing how we still could have won that game after all them daggone turnovers, that has me hope.
Yeah. There is a lot. There is a lot of hope, and the games that we've got left. We've got the Raiders Sunday now. Kenny Pickett is coming into town. Doesn't look like Geno Smith is going to start. But even if Geno Smith did start somehow, he's not a scary quarterback to go up against. But the Raiders, they got Gentry, who's he's proved to have quite a decent rookie year. But you can't I don't want to disrespect Kenny Pickett, because he came in a couple of times last season and he filled in, he did his job, okay, and but we can't lose this game now on Sunday. Cannot lose it. We lose this game Sunday, then it's really going to shit is really going to hit the fan. But the only other scary thing is the record against Pete Carroll. I think we're 0-9 against Pete Carroll, something like that. But this Raiders team is not really scary, so we have to win this game on Sunday. What do you think, Matt?
Man, those Pete Carroll stats are those stats that cross different regimes and home and away and playoff, and
yeah.
I just have a hard time following them because Pete Carroll's never played against Sirianni to my knowledge. Has he, boys?
I think the one time I think was that game in 2023 that the Eagles lost. But it's been mostly even like going back to like Andy Doug like chip days. So yeah, I think it's a small sample size there.
Yeah, so I'm not particularly worried about the Raiders coming in here. If they come in here and eat our lunch, then we didn't deserve to eat lunch. And I'm just that's how I look at this. I mean, this doesn't get more laid out than it needs to be. And think about our record in snow games over the past few years, guys.
Yeah,
we got some snow coming.
Yeah,
and so I asked the Rams if they liked playing the snow last year. They probably didn't. And Detroit, did they like that? Probably not so much.
Yeah, that game was awesome last year. I loved that. Jalen Carter coming through, making that save at the last second.
It was amazing.
God. We all thought it was over. It was. Go on, Just.
So the Raiders and the Titans are probably the two worst teams I've watched play this year. Those two teams are atrocious. They're fighting to see who gets that number 1 pick. If we don't cover the spread, what was it last? Like 10.5, 11.5, something like that. I'm not a gambling man, but that was, I think, what I heard on the afternoon show. If we don't beat these guys by like 14 or more, I'm going to be upset. And I know Matt's saying, there's 1 to 5 inches expected. Good. Run it down their dadgum throat. Yeah. Use Saquon, use Bigsby, and you know what? Use Hurts. Use it. Now's the time, guys. If we don't make a statement tomorrow against this team, like saying, hey, we ain't dead yet, then we don't, like Matt said, we don't deserve to eat.
Yeah, definitely. They got to use Jalen run game now. It's one of the only things left that we've got an advantage in. You look at the tush push. All the talk has been over the tush push the last couple of seasons. teams, even though they've tried to ban it, they've tried to get rid of it, teams have not been able to find a way to stop it. As where this year, finally now they're starting to stop it. Yeah, the run game, get some RPO stuff going. You know what I mean? I love the Shane Steichen offense. It was all RPO, slant, quick completions to AJ over the middle. But we have not seen nowhere near enough of that this year. And even going back to with Kellen Moore last year, we didn't see a lot of RPO stuff in the beginning because we ended up becoming a run game. So I want to ask you, Drew and Matt, with the run game this season, it's been a struggle. The O-line have been banged up. Lane Johnson is obviously not ready to come back yet. So, you think I've been hard on the O-line like a lot of us have this year because, they've struggled to get the run game going, even though they've been banged up. But, you look back last season, we became such a run-heavy team and those guys dominated in such a big fashion. I suppose it's rightly that they are going to be banged up this year, but obviously there's been the lack of discipline. Jordan Mailata giving away penalty. Every game he's giving away a penalty. Like, I just don't know what's going on. And then he goes on the Jordan Mailata show the following day then, and he's like, I got to execute. I got to do better. But why is there, what is going on with the O-line? Like, why can't they establish the run game? I'm not expecting it to be as dominant as it was last year, but they just did last week, they started to get the run game going and it was working, but they didn't. Once again, Kevin Patullo didn't stick to it. It was working and he went away from it and he made Jalen pass the ball more and everything went tits up. So how do you guys feel about the run game?
Yeah, I feel like I've just kind of almost accepted that, it just feels like this is what, they're going to be for the rest of the year. And I think you kind of have to hope that, you're going to be able to win a, 17-14 type of game in the playoffs, which is obviously, a coin flip and a dangerous way to live. But, and also, hope that like occasionally Saquon is going to be able to, break a big run like he did on Monday night. Now, obviously, there were a couple, asterisks there with that being like a fake, tush push situation and all. They just kind of look beat up. They just kind of look beat up to me that, just like a lot of attrition playing a, ton of snaps last year where it seems to have had a carryover effect. And I feel like one thing that's maybe flown under the radar a little bit has kind of just been the drop off with Cam Jurgens at center between, like the offseason back surgery. And I remember, I think it was early on in the Lions. It was early on in the Lions game. He missed, I think, I saw him miss a block, or it might have been they tried to run a screen, which we're not typically great at, and he kind of couldn't get to the second level. And I remember even putting on Twitter at one point, are we sure a healthy Brett Toth is not better than Cam Jurgens this very second? Now, probably would have been wrong in that scenario, but yeah, they just seem like a really just beating. And for what it's worth, I actually think they've been better in recent weeks. And I think this is the type of thing where, they could, most of the group is under contract. Hopefully Lane, doesn't retire. I would think he's going to keep playing. I could see, a new right guard next year where, Tyler Steen isn't necessarily back. I think they could come back together, next year and be a really good unit again. But if we're expecting just dramatic improvement down the stretch here where they all of a sudden find it, I don't know. I guess maybe you can call me the Grinch if we're doing a Christmas show here, but I just don't see that happening here.
Yeah. Mm.
Cam Jurgens got interviewed this week or after the game the other day and said that, hey, we got to get rid of the mistakes during practice and that they're not doing that. So at what point are the coaches, are they just not enforcing the rule of law during practice? I mean, I don't think Stoutland is, sorry to criticize Stoutland on a Christmas show, but like, he's not above, a criticism or to improvement. If he's that much of a whisperer, then is there you keeping your guys on sides is not rocket science. That shouldn't be something. And I think that also comes back to how, what's a quick snap? I don't know what that is. We have to wait until there's 3 seconds left on the clock. And then, oh my gosh, Tyler Steen, hurry up and get down. Dude, can we just maybe call 2 plays and run up and run the sons of guns, and let's go pound somebody when they aren't expecting it. That is driving me insane how long we wait. The defense is sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting, and they know that it's going to be within 3 seconds of the thing going off. So they're more ready. If we did it at 13 seconds left or 8, goodness gracious, I just think that would give us such an advantage that we just don't have, because then our talent can overcome the talent on the other side of the ball. And our talent on our side of the ball is far superior than almost anybody in the NFL. But we're handcuffing ourselves by doing that.
See, that was something I wanted to hit on as well, guys. Matt nailed it. When you're snapping the ball every play with 1 to 3 seconds left on the clock, all you're doing is giving the defense, they're getting a running start because they know it's coming. Once it gets down, and we lead the league like by far with time left on the play clock before we're dead last. Okay, so that, to me, that right there, that's coaching and play calling right there. So is Patullo second guessing himself on getting the call in, or is Sirianni, like, is he saying, hey, let's do this? And Patullo, they're going back and forth, let's do that. Something has to give there, because when they break huddle, man, there's 10 seconds left. It seems like when they break huddle and get back to the line. So yeah, that's something huge that I wanted to hit on as well that Matt nailed. What is going on in that regard? In my opinion, it has to come to the coaching right there, because they're not giving Jalen enough time to look and read and diagnose what maybe he needs to check to. And he's like, hurry, go. And they're snapping it with 1 to 2 seconds left.
Yeah, and this is why probably most of the time, this is why you see Jalen only go into the first read on the play, because there's such a hurry to get the ball out, and he hasn't got the time. And then when they do get something going, we get a penalty and we're sent back 10, 15 yards, and it kills the entire drive. Like, I'm not kidding you. I honestly think the Raiders, the Raiders game on Sunday, that first drive is going to be a 3 and out. And I don't want to be like the Negadelphia thing, but it is going to happen. I just know it. And then Jordan Mailata's going to give a penalty away, and it's going to be 3 and out. And now even like Jake Elliott is struggling kicking the ball.
Yeah.
You can always rely on Jake, and he always misses the easy kicks. He can make a 60-yarder, but he can't make 20 yards. It's the lack of discipline has killed me this season. I hate seeing that, because they're a Super Bowl champion team, and they should not be committing these errors. And if I hear the word execute one more time, I'm going to flip my lid, because it's just insane that they should not be. Look how deep we are into the season now, and they're still committing these errors. And I don't think it's going to get fixed now. I think this is something we're going to have to be dealing with in the playoffs. And it's going to hit us at the worst possible time in the playoffs, and it could cost us, going back to back. And that's the real shame about it. So you've got the Raiders on Sunday. Then we've got, Buffalo, Washington, I think, to end the season. So these Washington games, we've got to sweep Washington, because we have got to win this division now. And then Buffalo, that's not gonna be an easy game, but it is a game we can win, because Buffalo haven't been fantastic down the stretch either. Josh Allen is struggling. So, what do you guys think? We need to win out now. So do you think we can win the NFC East, because Dallas is starting to get hot? And how do you guys feel about that?
Here's how I'd answer that. So if we think about it like, baseball, where like you have like a magic number, which is definitely more popular in baseball, but like, we need a combo of 3, like Eagles wins, like Cowboys losses. My view right now is you better have that number down to 1 before Christmas, where you totally, at that point control your own destiny, because Dallas's schedule is pretty soft to end it. I think they're at Washington on Christmas, and then I think they play the Giants. So, they have a couple close games here, but there's a good chance, they go 2-0 in their final two. So, just to start, you got to stop this losing streak. You got to get a win tomorrow, get the magic number down to 2. Hopefully the Vikings can, give the Cowboys a game tomorrow night. It'd be awesome to somehow get it down to 1 tomorrow. Do I think we will win the NFC East? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. But I feel like we kept saying the same thing in, throughout, the early portion of that collapse in 2023 too. And, the Cowboys would lose a game, door would open and, we would cough up a game and wouldn't walk through and, just kept not walking through the door until it got to the point where, like, it was almost like, okay, the Cowboys are like, okay, you're not going to take it. We'll just, we'll walk through the door and then get crushed by the Packers in the playoffs. Yes, I do think we're gonna win. I do think we're gonna win the division. I feel like I've had this like preseason bet in my like DraftKings account that I've been just like waiting for it to cash for weeks now. But it's like now it's like you can't mess around tomorrow. If you lose this game tomorrow, then like all bets are off. So you got to do some work in the next week or two where it doesn't come down to that final week.
Yeah. How about you, Matt?
Man, I think we're going 2-2. If I'm being honest, I think that Jaden Daniels is a problem for us for 10 years if he stays healthy. He is we saw that we need to respect him last year. We know what it's like when a quarterback returns to action and the energy that person brings to the table. And the NFC East is a tough place, man. I mean, heck, if the Giants can split with us, why couldn't the commies? I wanted to call them the Redskins forever because they are still the Redskins. Yeah. However, I don't know that winning in Buffalo right after Christmas is going to be a real easy game. I hope that all the Go Birds guys that are going there enjoy it, but I'm a little realistic about that. I just think that that's a tough game. Now, their defense is a sieve, but we're not showing that we can score, so it doesn't really matter right now. And I think that time they're going to need it more than we are.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for them to shut down Jaden Daniels for the rest of the year because I don't see the point in Washington, prompting him out there because he's just getting hurt in every game. I mean, absolutely gutted for Zach Ertz last week. Seeing that injury looked
it was horrible.
That was horrible. And I hope he doesn't have to go out like that, but I know it's looking like it's going to be a long road to recovery. So, but yeah, we could easily split with Washington because if they do Jaden Daniels out there, then he's going to be a problem. So and that Buffalo game that's going to be tough. And I've been telling Justin all year long he needs to get out to Buffalo for that game because the last time we watched the Buffalo game we won. And it was, so I need Justin to somehow find his way to New York. But
that ain't happening.
So how are you
guys
feeling, Justin?
About the Buffalo?
Are we winning the NFC East?
Yes.
Do what?
Are we winning the NFC East?
Yes, I think we do. If we don't, I think it is a collapse of epic proportions. We started out 8-2, and we're now at 8-5. If we don't win the East, I'm sorry. I know Drew's a big Sirianni guy, and I am too. But you have to really if you lose the East at this point now, I don't think Daniels plays the rest of the season because he kind of re-injured that arm last week. I think Washington has 3 wins on the season, 4 maybe.
3.
What you need to play for now is a good draft pick. Throw Mariota out there. Keep your franchise quarterback on the bench. You saw it with this franchise before what they did with RG3 when they rushed him back from the knee injury and it just disrupted his entire career. You have a generational quarterback if he can stay healthy. Right now, he's not healthy. Sit him down. You have meaningless games left. The only meaning those games have left for you as a franchise is you can hurt your draft status, like where you'll be drafting. You're doing good right now. You got 3-4 wins. You're a top 5 pick. Get you a really good offensive lineman to help protect that guy or get whatever you need. They're an old team. They're probably the oldest team in the daggone league right now. So I don't know that Daniels plays the rest of the season, but like Matt said, I don't think we beat the Bills. I know that defense is atrocious and they give up running yards like a daggone running faucet, but I just don't think we can go up there and win. So I think we go 3-1 rest of the way, unless like the final Washington game means nothing and we just sit our guys and maybe McKee goes out there and balls out and just rip them to shreds or something. But
Yeah.
I think we go 3-1 the rest of the way.
I
One
remember.
thing just to go ahead.
Yes, go on, Drew.
I was one thing just to tack on, because we're talking a lot about the Buffalo game. I think we may need to reframe how we think about some of these cold weather games. Like, look, I love cold weather games. It's my goal to go to like a snow game. I think it's like an awesome fan experience.
Yeah, awesome.
I get the sense that Jalen doesn't particularly like the cold. Like we talk about, we romanticized the Rams game last year because it was awesome, but I think Jalen struggled like a good chunk of that game where so it's almost kind of like a mixed bag, like kind of like conflicting, like do you want that cold weather going into the playoffs? Now, Matt, maybe you remember, I don't remember the temperature for the NFC Championship game last year where Jalen played awesome, so I'm sure there's cases where he's played well in the cold too, but I just get the sense that he does not particularly like cold weather. And when the offense is already not going great, I just get worried when you throw, more nature elements that you can't control into that mix.
We're going to find out tomorrow. We're going to find out tomorrow. Yeah. And when I think about these cold weather games, sorry to interrupt you, Adam, I start thinking about that. But the Buffalo game is very interesting. I mean, I got 2 points I want to bring up about that. Is that one of the reasons Jeffrey Lurie wants to put a roof on it for his quarterback? I think that we lose a huge advantage by putting a roof on that stadium. I agree. I agree think with that. Is just awful.
That's not Philadelphia. That is not Philadelphia.
Kiss my rear end, Elliot. But dude, football's not meant to be played in a dome. Stop that nonsense.
No,
this is a gladiator sport for men. And you know what? Sorry, you got a little cold today. Give me a break. Grow up. And I think about the Buffalo game. Is that their last home game this year? Or do they have one more regular season?
So I was curious about that too, and then obviously I'll let you go on that. I think their final Week 18 game is home too, but I was thinking about that too.
Because I think that's a travesty that they're taking that they're putting a roof in Buffalo too. I mean, that's a home field advantage that most people don't have, and they're just saying, you know what, no big deal. I'd rather have capital. Well, I'd rather have the reputation, and I'd rather have people scared coming to my house. I have been to a Seattle game, and I can tell you it's louder than Arrowhead. It is louder than the Link by a lot. And the players know that, and the players talk about it. I remember I represented a few. And Brandon Brooks, they.
Yeah. I'd be very shocked if Jeffrey Lurie succumbs to that one day, and he pulls the trigger, and maybe he'd have to get some more investment and what have you to put a roof on there, because like you said, that's an advantage that we have. People are scared to come to Philly to play us in these type of weathers, deep into the playoffs, and so it's an advantage that we have as well, and I don't think the people of Philadelphia want the roof generally. It was such a tough sports town. It's not going to be a good look for the identity of Philly sports, to put a roof on there. And Buffalo making a big mistake. And I remember when me and Justin were doing a schedule show after the Super Bowl, and we were looking at the schedule, and I remember saying why have they scheduled this Buffalo game, for so deep into the season, where hopefully it'll be a pointless game for the Eagles? And I thought it was going to be a pointless game. I thought that would be a game where they put Tanner McKee out there or whatever, because we've wrapped everything up. We've won the NFC East by that point, and it's just a shame that it's gone the other way. So, so talking of Tanner McKee and Jalen, it's been all over, the ESPN have sort of mocked WIP a bit this week, because, there's an element where, Jalen has a bad game, and it's just, Jalen needs to be out as quarterback. He can't start. They need to bench him and bring Tanner McKee in and this, that, and whatever. And I don't feel that way, and I'm sure you guys don't feel that way. But what do you make of why are we so quick to bench Jalen Hurts? Why is that talk out there when he's a Super Bowl MVP? He's took us to two Super Bowls in 3 years, been in the playoffs every year as the starter. So why is, I mean, like, I know it's been a tough few games for him, and he obviously hasn't had his best season, but he hasn't had his worst season. And there's still 5 more games left to play, plus hopefully a decent run into the playoffs now. So why is that out there still? Why is there still doubt of Jalen Hurts?
I think a lot of this is lazy journalism, just like the snowballs at Santa. It's just such a lazy
Yeah,
rhetoric that the national media likes to have against Philadelphia. My friends and I aren't talking about getting rid of the Super Bowl MVP because he had 3 bad weeks. I've had 3 bad weeks at work too. And you know what?
Yeah.
I didn't get fired. So I just think it's absurd. There's a lot of franchises in the NFL that don't have a Super Bowl MVP quarterback in the history of their franchise. And we have one, and it's the same calendar year. Like, we have to calm down.
Yeah.
I think that this is ESPN just being lazy they need clickbait, and everybody just needs to, some of the guys that we all know. I don't mind going to give their names out there because it's not worth. That's what they want. They want us to say their names, but I think it's just absurd. It's absurd. He gives us the best chance to win. Period.
yeah, definitely. How do you feel, Drew, about all this stuff out there with Jalen? Because it's not just come from ESPN. Obviously, we all love WIP and what have you, but Joe Giglio put it out there, and Joe was just like,
I want to arm wrestle him someday.
he's on his. I love Joe G.
I swear to God.
But he's he's just he doesn't do himself any favors when he puts that stuff out there. So how do you feel, Drew, about the Jalen Hurts stuff? Because obviously there is talent there in Tanner McKee. We've seen it when he comes in. But as a starter, I don't think that would go more than 2 games before he gets figured out. And plus, obviously, with the offensive game plan that we've had this year, I don't much doubt that the play calling would be much different than what they're calling for Jalen Hurts, because they haven't been running Jalen Hurts. They've been making Jalen pass the ball more because they can't establish the run. So how do you feel, Drew, about the silliness of benching Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, so if it were up to me, I would not bench Jalen. Jalen has the rest of the season. As far as I'm concerned, I think the perspective that he's 10 months removed from outplaying Pat Mahomes in the Super Bowl is important. I hope he's the quarterback next year. I hope he's the quarterback for the next 10 years. I think he represents the franchise well. I think more I believe this is more of just, kind of like a slump and, pressing than any type of decline. We've seen other, guys who've had long careers, like, Matthew Stafford go through some rough patches. I feel like Jared Goff's career was on the brink of, it looked like extinction back in like 2021. Now, 2-3 years later, he's an MVP candidate, and you have, an entire Ford Field in Detroit, chanting his name when he runs out. Now, I think, so the couple things that would concern me, though, so like to Matt's point about the national media, I agree with that. I think what they don't realize, which is correct, is that most Eagles fans, don't want to bench him. Most, people, aren't there. The thing that would concern me, that we just straight up don't know the answer to right now, is how do the Eagles feel about him, and why did those reports, come out after, the Lions game a couple weeks ago, and that they've, kind of, haven't totally stopped since. I know, obviously national media can sensationalize things. And look, obviously this is a matter of personal opinion. I've always respected, Derek Gunn, going back to my childhood. I believe he's credible. I believe he has good sources, in the Eagles organization. So, why are the Eagles, letting stuff like that get out there? And we don't know the answer. We don't know the answer to that. We're going to see it, in their actions in, the off season as this whole thing plays out. Again, I don't think it's viable for this season. I expect Jalen to be the quarterback on opening day next year. But the fact that those things keep getting out there, I think is, at least like a data point to pay attention to as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. It's killing the. Yeah, I mean, I know they're saying a lot that the team is like, more together this year than 2023, and I think that's true as well. But like you said, it's scary that these things are still finding their way out of the locker room. You know what I mean? So but yeah, there we go. So let me ask you all this: like, do you like next year's the final year of Tanner McKee's contract? So do you think the Eagles will draft a quarterback next year just to bring a guy in if they trade away Tanner McKee for something? Do you think that's an option? Because they've always sort of been ahead of the game in that respect, because when Donovan was struggling, they drafted Randall Cobb. Was it the quarterback then? Was that his name? Randall
Kevin Cobb, yeah.
Kevin Cobb. Kevin Cobb. You know what I mean? They drafted Nick Foles. They brought Michael Vick in. They've always seemed to be prepared for the worst. Jalen was drafted to back up Carson. Everything went, crazy with Carson Wentz, and Jalen, has led the team since. So do you think they're still thinking like that with everything that's been going on? Do you think they're thinking like that now, or do you think they'll wait until the off season? Just what do you think?
I think they're always looking out for young, high ceiling type quarterbacks in the draft. They proved that year in and year out. I don't think, like you heard somebody say, they draft someone in the second or third round. I think that was put out this week. I don't think they do that unless someone, a Jalen Hurts type coming out of college, falls. I don't see a Jalen Hurts type coming out of college falling like that. Now, would they take a fifth or fourth or fifth or sixth? Yeah, if there's somebody there that they think they can take, could be a really good backup, and they can trade McKee and recoup a second, because there was a lot of talk this offseason about trading McKee and stuff like that. But I don't see him going out and using a second or third round pick on a quarterback in the draft this year, unless it's just some phenomenal talent that falls that you weren't expecting. But I think Jalen will be the quarterback for the foreseeable future. Matt hit the nail on the head. We've all had bad days, bad weeks at work. And yeah, he has struggled quite a bit here lately, it seems. But in my opinion, Jalen seems like the type of quarterback where he doesn't let that stuff bring him down. He keeps his head up. He stands there. He takes the bullets. He takes the criticism, and he just keeps moving forward. The thing I would like to see Jalen do, and we know AJ probably doesn't, and I hate to keep going back to AJ, I want to see him spread the ball around more like he did at the beginning of the season, because these last few weeks it seems like he's targeted AJ so much. And when they've been targeting him so much, what have we done? We've lost 3 straight. 3 straight, guys.
Amen.
Get it, spread the ball around. Devontae Smith was having the best year of his career up to that point. Dallas Goedert had a career resurgence. He was leading all tight ends in touchdown receptions and stuff. And then all this shit happens. And now look,
it's been AJ,
it's just going down slowly. Yeah.
And I mean,
I would say AJ Brown is on another team next year, in my opinion.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
I think he will be.
I mean, you look at that drive in overtime last week. They were, moving the ball really nicely down the field, and Jalen hadn't targeted Jahan Dotson all game, but yet that final throw was towards Jahan Dotson. When you haven't targeted him the whole game, now I'm more, like you said, I'm all for spreading it around, but you need to get in rhythm with guys in the game as well, and that wasn't established because of the AJ Brown problem, because of all the shit with him the last few weeks, and the disruption and what have you, and that's what happened. And that, like Drew said a couple of weeks ago when he was on, like this Chargers game was going to be, strong possibility that it could end up like the Seattle game in 2023, and it sort of ended the same way as the 23 game in Seattle. Jalen threw the pick at the end and the game was over, and it was just like, oh man, you haven't gone to Dotson all game. Why are they making him? Why is he going there? It was just like, I can't. It was such a shit way to lose that game because it was right there. I thought they would drive in to win the game. I thought it was another Jalen Hurts overtime win. Drive. It was going so good, and yeah. So worrying sort of times, but. I don't know what else more.
Just thinking about the way they lost that game again pisses me off even more.
Forcing that ball in that hole. We did not need to force that.
It's first down. That's the big thing.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I think they would have, if they got it, they would have won it, and but it didn't go. I don't want to talk too early about the draft, but before we finish now, we've seen Tyler Steen, he's got the starting role this year, and right guard for Mekhi Becton. He hasn't got that, he's not as big as Mekhi Becton. He hasn't got that dominant presence in the run game, or the pass game, really. And do you think how he always does at the drafts, he likes to, draft at the lines, the line of scrimmage, the defensive line, the O-line. So, we've seen that Ty Robinson, that defensive tackle, he can't get on the field this year. I don't know if that's because he's got injuries or if he just hasn't been quite ready to play. I think he was there last week, but that was only because Jalen Carter was out. I don't remember seeing Ty Robinson have any snaps. I'm not too sure. But,
he's barely played, I think.
Yeah. Do you think how he sticks to the O-line and the drafting at the trenches this year? Because it's probably really going to be needed this year. But how do we, the problem is there, how do we get up high in the draft to get it? Because, more than likely, we're going to be in the bottom half of the draft. So it's going to be tough. And then you've got Tanner McKee. Is Tanner McKee an option to trade away to get up in the draft? Do you think that will be worth Howie making that type of move to get a premier lineman or defensive lineman? Because we need that depth. Well, that's what we've struggled at this year on all positions, is depth. So what do you guys think, Matt?
I think that, a second ago I leaned down because I have a beer called Quarterback Factory, back to the last one, which is quite delicious. And
nice.
I think Howie is a master of currency. And it's something that, that's why we would draft a quarterback if it's currency. And that's why we would trade McKee if it gives us currency. Currency helps you handle the salary cap. I think that if we don't go after a big replacement on that O-line for Lane, and Steen drives me crazy. He is undersized, getting murdered out there. I'd rather just have a big fat guy that can't move, that covers more space than Steen, personally. However, I think we also need to think about the financials of the offense versus the defensive side of the ball. And I think that we need to go to that O-line because we need to make the offense a little more cost efficient for a few years, because we are about to unload a Brinks truck to the defensive players. There are so many of them that are due. We have to pay them. And would I love them to sign McKee at the end of the year, give him an extension, keep him in-house because he knows our offense? Yes, I would. But I don't know that we can afford to go blow another 4 or 5 extra million than we already would have for that. I just don't. I don't think that's a smart fiscal thing to do. But I also know that when you're doing a deal, I'm a real estate guy. You need to have a seller if you're going to be you need a buyer if you're going to be a seller. I don't know if everyone else is that high on McKee or not. You would think about Kellen Moore might be the guy, but right now they seem to be doing okay in New Orleans. It's an interesting thing to think about. That draft is really a big deal.
It is.
What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like, if you want to recap assets for McKee, you're rooting like heck for what's his name, for Tyler Shaw, however you say his last name, to struggle the rest of the year, where Kellen goes to the Saints GM and is like, get me this guy from who I coached in Philly. I need this guy. My early read is, I think you could do something. Look, at some point they're going to have to, sooner than later, get Lane's heir apparent. I feel like it's talked about, for a lot of years. I even remember going back to 2023 where I was into taking Paris Johnson and having him, maybe play guard for a couple of years. It's a shame we don't have Corey to weigh in on that. Actually, I'm not sure how he's playing out in Arizona. But so my early thinking is I feel like you could draft, a guy with flexibility, like a long-term tackle, but, plays guard for a year or two, takes Steen spot, and then kicks out to tackle when Lane is gone. But yeah, they're going to, regardless of how this season ends, it's going to be a real pivotal off season, because if we, think that AJ might not be here, then it kind of brings back into, do you draft, a wide receiver early to complement Devontae, which we know, outside of Devontae has not been a super strong point for Howie. So yeah, man, it's going to be a real pivotal off season, and let's just hope that, by miracle, another parade down Broad Street makes it, more fun.
Let me ask y'all this real quick, and Drew's probably going to be the one who knows the answer real quick. Kayshon Boutte, wide receiver for the Pats, came out of LSU, low draft pick, a guy who really didn't pan out his final season at LSU under Brian Kelly. One of the few LSU wide receivers that everybody thought was going to be a high draft pick, did not do well. I think he's having a pretty good year this year. Everybody and their mama pretty much thinks that AJ wants to go play for Vrabel. He loved Vrabel. Everybody knows he loved Vrabel. Everybody down here in Tennessee, you don't hear a lot about the Titans, but when you do, it was about Mike Vrabel because everybody loved him as a coach here. If they were to trade AJ and trade him to the Pats, could we get Boutte and maybe a third-round pick? Because everybody's saying right now, all you're going to get for AJ is a second. So could you get Kayshon Boutte and a third-round pick or something like that? Would that be feasible? Because I feel like Boutte's having a pretty good year this year.
You're right, Justin. He is having a solid year. He's actually been on a fantasy team of mine. I need him to really go off tomorrow in the playoffs. I do believe he was out for a couple weeks with an injury. I don't recall what it was off the top of my head, but I like the player, and I think the mock trade you proposed is relatively realistic there. I like the player for sure.
We've heard a lot of people say Devontae Smith is a number one receiver. I forget who it is. Somebody keeps coming on WIP, and they say that constantly. I forget who. Maybe it's who's the offensive line? Ross Tucker. I think Ross Tucker said that he believes Devontae Smith is the number one receiver on this team. So if you could get a Kayshon Boutte and a third for AJ, that might be something they do. But I do not believe AJ will be on this team next
year. Yeah, I want more than a third round pick for AJ Brown. It's got to be the first, the second at the very least. But yeah, they will definitely need someone to complement Devontae. If you are gonna unload AJ Brown, then you've got to bring in someone who can, get close to matching up what AJ Brown is. They can't rush into it, and I don't think they will. And like Matt said, how he is, very thing with currency, and I don't think he's going to, if he has to trade AJ Brown away, he ain't going to trade him away for, something more than a second or first round pick and a good player in return. If Devontae can be the number one receiver, but we've got to have someone else on the other side. It can't be Jahan Dotson. You know what I mean? And he could be he should be targeted more than what he is, because when he played for Washington, he was really good. Well, I mean, he was good when he played against the Eagles. But yeah. So, so guys, I'll start wrap up the show. So, Drew, thanks for coming on. Matt, it's been awesome having you. I hope you guys and your families have a great Christmas, and it's a busy time of the year. So thanks for making time to come on with me and Justin. And Justin is going to close out the show today. He told me he's got something to get us all fired up. So, Justin, I'm going to let you close out the Christmas show today.
Real quick, I want to thank Drew and Matt for joining us. Super happy Matt was finally able to get on with us. But something has really struck me these last couple of weeks with this team, and it took me back to preseason when they were talking about the Super Bowl and everything. They're just like, oh, it's back to square one. It's like it never happened. We didn't feel it and stuff like that. That pisses me off, because that shirt that Matt has on says we were Super Bowl champions. And this is the same type of tone and attitude that the team took after they won it in 2017. They were just kind of flat, laid back, lackadaisical. I want this team to start coming out, and I don't know if it's too late or not, but I want this team to start coming out like Muhammad Ali, saying the champ is here. We're here. The target's on our back. We are the Super Bowl champions. If you want what we got, you got to come get it. This is what you want. Come get it, Dak. Right here. Super Bowl champions. Right here. If you want it, come get it. Because you're going to have to take it from us and pry it from our cold, dead hands. Go Birds!
Yeah. On that note, Merry Christmas, everyone, and go Birds.
Merry Christmas.
Go
Love
Birds.
y'all. Love y'all.
Always go Birds, baby.